The sound of the knife chopping against the heavy oak board echoed steadily like the ticking of a countdown clock to execution. The smell of burnt butter was thick, and the sweltering heat from the high-capacity ovens blasted directly into my face, making sweat run into my stinging eyes.
In the stifling space of the five-star hotel kitchen, every sound became ear-piercing. The clashing of steel, the clinking of dishes, and the growl of the gas fire. I stood at the corner of the prep station, my hands red from the ice water, peeling the shells of the tiger shrimp labeled as premium grade. But when my fingers touched the limp flesh, pungent, rotting stench hit me right in the face.
The smell of decay was poorly hidden under the cold layer of shaved ice. It was not the smell of the ocean, but the smell of greed disregarding human life. I stopped, staring at the shrimp that had turned a cloudy gray, an unmistakable sign of expired and decomposing food. "Julian, you have to come see this right now!" I shouted, my voice cracking amid the kitchen noise.
Julian, my brother-in-law and the executive chef, stepped forward with the aura of a king reviewing his troops. He was dressed in a pristine, perfectly pressed white chef's uniform, a total contrast to my grease-stained apron. Julian wore a sparkling Patek Philippe watch under the LED lights, an ornament far too luxurious for someone working in a kitchen. He glanced at the batch of shrimp, his thin, sharp face unmoved.
"What are you shouting about, like an abandoned child, Alex?" He smirked, revealing a half-smile full of mockery. "This shrimp is completely spoiled, Julian. If we use this cream to cook the appetizer for the Bennett wedding, they'll have to be hospitalized immediately." I held up a shrimp, letting the rot waft into the space between us. Julian didn't step back. He looked at me with cold eyes, devoid of any familial warmth.
He reached out, adjusting the diamond necklace on his hand, a showy habit of flaunting his newfound wealth. "Don't pretend to be a geologist or a doctor here, Alex. You're just a sous chef whose reputation was lost 5 years ago." He tilted his head, looking at me as if looking at a strange specimen under a microscope. "This shipment is worth $15,000, and I have no intention of throwing it in the trash just because of your oversensitivity, you failure." He stepped closer, his expensive perfume mixing with the rotten shrimp smell to create a nauseating blend. "Do you think you're still running your own restaurant? You were fired, Alex. And now you are here because I allow you to be here. Cook it, and make sure that cream will cover up the smell you're so afraid of." He turned his back, the mockery of the surrounding prep cooks echoing like knives stabbing my pride. My silence now was not submission, but the strength of someone waiting for the right moment. I looked at Julian straight back, feeling the injustice choking my breath. He thought he could control everything, just like how he controlled my life for years. But he didn't know that beneath the skin of a despised sous chef, I held a secret that would destroy his fake crown. I bowed my head and continued to work, letting the taunts of my colleagues slide off my back like water on a lotus leaf. The invisible but polished chains of humiliation were tightly wound around me. 5 years ago, the meeting room at my old restaurant was just as cold and filled with the breath of others as this.
Julian, then my subordinate, looked at me with a triumphant gaze as he presented forged reports on food safety to dethrone me before the board of directors. Failure builds character, he once told me in a mocking tone, on the very day I lost everything. And now I am living like a ghost in my own dream. I work 16 hours a day, hiding behind piles of dishes and food waste, while the world ignores my existence. The only reason I am still standing here is Elena, my sister, and Julian's wife. She always believes that Julian is the benefactor of the family, the one who reached out to save me when I was at the bottom of the abyss. She doesn't see the cold smiles and the remarks that cut deep into my soul every time we sit at the same dinner table. She doesn't know that every dollar of salary I receive from Julian carries the taste of charity.
Last night, I sat in my cramped studio apartment, where the ceiling leaked and warmth was a luxury. I looked at my phone screen, displaying the final balance of my savings account. It was all the money I had scraped together during 5 years of silent endurance, every cent from extra work and skipping meals. I decided to withdraw it all.
This morning, when the fog still covered the city, I stood at the gate of a reputable farm in the suburbs. I personally selected the finest slabs of A5 Wagyu beef with perfect marble fat that Julian would never dare spend money to buy. I bought the premium wild mushroom sauce, a flavor that would turn tonight's main course into an undeniable masterpiece. Julian thinks I am the stupid sous chef who will obediently serve the rotting items he imported for illicit profit. He thought poverty had blinded my eyes and blunted my will. He didn't know that the sous chef he always despised possessed more experience and passion than all he could imagine. I secretly replaced Julian's low-quality beef shipment with the meat I bought myself. I prepared this main course with all the honor of a true chef. Julian's betrayal of the guests will begin with the spoiled shrimp appetizer. But the main course, my legacy, will be what exposes his vileness to everyone present. I felt my heartbeat stabilize, no longer fearful or trembling. Because tonight is not just a wedding party. Tonight is a lesson Julian will have to learn for a lifetime. He threw me into the fire, but he forgot that I am the one who created that fire. I smiled, a faint smile, like a reflection on the oven glass. This wedding, I will be the greatest lesson for all of you. The sound of the violin from the ballroom seeped through the kitchen door, thin and distant like the buzzing of a mosquito. On the other side of that door, 300 elite guests were raising glittering crystal glasses like victory trophies. They were dressed in meticulously tailored suits and expensive silk dresses, radiating the scent of wealth and power. And on this side, in the shadows of the hallway connecting the kitchen to the hall, I stood with a slow, steady pulse. The appetizer, those spoiled shrimp hiding under a layer of rich cream and pungent truffle oil, began to be carried out on shiny silver trays. Every time a tray passed by, I felt the scent of decay screaming for attention, despite the sophisticated seasoning. Julian stood at the hall door, his chef's coat without a single wrinkle, a glamorous smile plastered on his face for the VIP guests. He bowed to Mr. Bennett, the bride's father, with a calculated reverence. He was basking in the spotlight of praise for the high-class menu he had just presented. "You will see, sir, the flavors of Emerald Bay tonight are one of a kind," Julian said loudly, enough for everyone nearby to hear. I stood in the shadows, clutching a grease-stained towel, my eyes never leaving the plates. A guest, a senator with a dignified appearance, held a silver fork, smiled, and put a piece of shrimp into his mouth. I saw him pause for a second, his eyebrows slightly raised at the unusual sourness of the cream. But then he gave a social smile and swallowed it with a sip of fine wine. That was the beginning of the collapse. The perfection Julian worshipped was not warm. It was only the cold glow of false expectations. Half an hour later, the rhythm in the hall began to change alarmingly. The boisterous laughter receded, replaced by intermittent whispers and heavy coughing. A woman sitting at the center table suddenly dropped her glass. The sound of crystal shattering on the marble floor was as sharp as a sentence. She clutched her throat, her face turning bright red from an acute allergic reaction, her breath becoming shallow and labored. Panic began to spread like a wildfire on a snowy night. Julian immediately retracted his smile, his face turning from rosy to gray in just a few seconds. He didn't run to help the guest, but immediately retreated behind the velvet curtain, his eyes frantically searching for an escape. He saw me standing there, silently observing him from the shadows. In that moment, I saw the greed in him being replaced by a vile instinct. He was looking for a scapegoat. Julian walked quickly to me, grabbing my collar, his breath reeking of wine and fear. "The appetizer!"
You were in charge of that shrimp shipment, weren't you, Alex? He shouted, his voice trembling, but full of accusation. I told you to check carefully. Why did you let this happen? He intentionally spoke very loudly so that the surrounding servers could hear and remember. I didn't answer. I looked directly into his eyes, where control was breaking into pieces.
Julian hurriedly waved for the hotel manager and 2 security guards who were approaching. Him! It was him! Julian pointed his finger at me, his face distorted by a fake rage. He intentionally sabotaged this party because of his jealousy toward my position. I tried to help him when he was empty-handed, but he repaid me with this poison. Elena, my sister, ran from the hall with a tearful face and heavy breathing. "Alex, what have you done? Why would you harm our family like this?" She looked at me with a gaze of absolute disappointment. a gaze shaped by the lies Julian had sown for 5 years. Julian sneered. He believed he had constructed a perfect script to cast me into darkness forever. He turned to the manager. "Arrest him and call the police. I will testify to his malice." They didn't know that while they were busy weaving accusations, I was waiting for a bigger explosion. I had secretly prepared the main course with the best I had. The premium Wagyu beef was being kept warm in the specialized oven, for which I had secretly changed the lock code. Every beat of my heart was now as steady as a pendulum clock, marking the end of an empire built on rotten sand. Outside, the sirens of the ambulances began to wail, tearing through the luxurious atmosphere of Emerald. Julian thought he had won this battle by sacrificing me. But he forgot one thing. I was no longer the weak chef of 5 years ago for him to easily trample. "The party has only just begun, Julian," I said silently in my mind, a terrifying peace enveloping me. "Before the police handcuff me, I will show you who is truly running this kitchen." The rutilant hall of the Emerald Hotel now looked more like a chaotic crime scene than a lavish wedding. The crystal lights above still cast a sallow glow, but it only revealed the pale faces and extreme panic of the guests. The sirens of police cars and ambulances wailed incessantly outside the glass walls, creating a funeral march for this glamorous evening. The sound of crystal shattering on the white marble floor rang out as sharp as the sound of the very empire Julian had painstakingly built cracking apart. Red wine spilled over the pristine white tablecloths, looking like the bloodied stains of an irretrievable betrayal. Julian stood in the center of the chaos, his face distorted with fear, but his hands still trembling as they clutched the sparkling Patek Philippe watch on his wrist. "Arrest him! He poisoned everyone with that rotten shrimp batch!" Julian screamed, pointing his finger straight at my face as 2 police officers and the health inspector entered. He roared with a fake fury, trying to drown out the sound of his own racing heart. "He is a failure, a sous chef full of envy who wants to destroy my career." Elena knelt on the floor, her eyes filled with tears, looking at me with a hatred molded from Julian's lies. "Why did you do it, Alex? You have destroyed everything Julian tried to help us with." I did not flinch. I stood still in the hall, sensing the coldness of contempt enveloping me. But under my grease-stained work clothes, my heartbeat remained strangely calm. They thought I was a loser, an easy scapegoat for them to trample. "Enough, Julian." My voice rang out, not too loud, but enough to make the entire hall suddenly fall silent, drowning out the unfinished violin music. "Did you think my silence over the last 5 years was because I had no power? Did you think you could use me to cover up your own filthy greed?" I turned to look at the health inspector, who was holding the sample of spoiled shrimp that Julian had intentionally blamed on me. "Sir, If you check the shipment in cold storage number 4, you will see the entire batch of expired shrimp is still there. And you will also see the forged labels Julian used to deceive the entire management system. Julian's face turned from pale to white as a corpse. He stammered, his lips trembling, unable to utter a word. I pulled a stack of fresh purchase receipts from my pocket and placed them on the marble table stained with red wine. These are the receipts for the A5 Wagyu beef and premium forest mushrooms from a private farm.
I used my own pocket money to buy them, because I knew if I let Julian handle the main course, this wedding would truly become a deadly disaster. Every eye fixed on Julian, whispers began to hiss like cobras. You want results, Julian? The result is that my main course is the only thing that didn't put anyone in the hospital tonight. The health inspector signaled his subordinates to check the cold storage as I directed. Only a few minutes later, they returned with a black plastic bin filled with the rotting meat Julian had intentionally kept hidden. Julian Grant, you are immediately suspended from your practice and must go to the station to give a statement. The sound of metal handcuffs clinking together was sharp and neat, like the sound of a prison door slamming shut. Julian collapsed onto the floor, his thin shoulders trembling. The expensive watch on his hand now looked ironic. He looked at me. His gaze no longer held contempt, only extreme horror as he realized the sewer rat he always trampled was the one who dethroned him. Elena was stunned. She looked at the pile of receipts, then at her brother being led away. She approached me, her trembling hands trying to touch my arm, but I gently brushed them away. Don't, Elena. You aren't looking for your husband. You're just trying to save the illusion of wealth Julian bestowed upon you. I turned and walked away, not once looking back at the chaos behind me. The glass doors of the hall closed, leaving behind the cries and the collapse of an empire built on rotten sand. Justice does not need to be loud. It only needs silent preparation and a moment for the truth to speak for itself. The biting night wind hit my face like a ritual of baptism, washing away the layer of greasy grime and the stifling atmosphere of Julian's kitchen. I stood on the sidewalk, watching the flickering red and blue lights slowly fade into the city's ruthless night mist. Julian was sitting in one of those cars, the hands that once smugly flaunted an expensive watch, now locked by cold steel rings. He had lost everything: reputation, status, and the hypocritical moral mask he had painstakingly painted for years. His downfall did not bring me a loud sense of triumph or momentary excitement. It only left a deep stillness in my soul, like a calm lake after a great storm has passed. I took a deep breath, feeling my lungs fill with fresh air no longer tainted by the smell of burnt butter and the contempt of the elite. For 5 years, I had let silence envelop me like a protective layer of armor against toxic insults. I had accepted being a ghost, a nameless sous chef, trampled under the polished heels of those who disregarded integrity. They had mistaken my patience and silence for a sign of failure and cowardice.
They had called me poor, a parasite living off the charity of a scheming savior. But tonight, at the very banquet table they intended to use to celebrate lies, the truth spoke for itself with a stern voice. I showed them that true power does not lie in false premium labels or million-dollar lavish parties. True power is when you can hold your head high and walk out of that room without owing them a single word of explanation.
I felt the thin wallet in my pocket, empty, because all my final savings had been poured into that batch of Wagyu beef. That money was sweat, it was tears, it was 5 years of enduring in the dark in exchange for a moment of justice. But my heart felt strangely light and peaceful. A person's legacy does not lie in a massive fortune built on deceiving diners or illicit profits. It lies in who you are when the fire in the oven goes out and the last guests have left. It lies in whether you can look straight into the mirror and see a chef who never betrayed the soul of the food he made. Elena still stood there, under the hotel's brilliant porch light, looking small and out of place in an expensive dress she never truly belonged to. She looked at me, her gaze still lingering with surprise and the fear of a future without Julian's calculated protection. I will not go back to comfort her, nor will I go back to offer another late explanation. This freedom is too precious to be tainted by apologies smelling of fake remorse. The past is no longer a heavy boulder weighing down my shoulders every time I wake up. It has become the layer of ash from which a truly new life will be born. A new kitchen will be built, without the need for crystal, red carpets, or expensive Italian marble. It will be a small space, located on some humble street corner, where the light is always warm and trust is the primary ingredient. In that place, diners will enjoy the flavor of honesty, a flavor that no expensive truffle oil can replace. The city is still breathing, still moving with its ruthless rhythm and bottomless ambitions. But this time, I will walk to my own rhythm, slowly, steadily, and with full self-respect. Julian's betrayal and greed have burned away, leaving only absolute peace in my soul. My journey is only just beginning as myself. Tomorrow, when the sun rises, I will go buy a new set of knives for myself. A sharp set of knives to start over, with clean hands and a completely free heart.